What's going on, guys? It's such a funny backstory with that too. My videographer is the one who was doing all the BTS. We just cast him in that role to do that. And earlier he was saying, like, you know, after he did that role, he's like, maybe I'll just be an actor. I was like, you want to be a director, bro? Like, you just meowed in a couple of scenes, and now you want to be an actor? Like, relax, bro. Relax. So we did a premiere in Houston, and everyone after the premiere was meowing at him the entire time. I could see his head getting so big the whole time. But that was based off a real thing, real quick, and I'll kick it off. That was really based off of someone who really spent time in a detention center. He was there for 3 months. He consulted on the show, and he told us, and while he was describing how terrible it was, his experience was, he said that there was a guy in there that would constantly meow. And I was like all the time? He was like, all the time. Just meow. It's like, it could be at 3 a.m. and you hear him meowing like that. I was like, well, that's going in the show immediately.
And the meow thing was like all anybody would talk about when he was in the last, we did a panel and he was here, the meow guy, and apparently he was the one everybody talked about. Anyway.
If he gets nominated, I'm going to be furious.
So can you quickly just, you guys just saw the first 2 episodes, can you quickly kind of tell them where it goes from there so we can talk about what happens next?
I mean, sure. Clearly, Mo is a massive fuck up, first of all. Like, he constantly can't get out of his own way, and he's always piling it on himself, and he's dealing with so many emotions, clearly with his girlfriend and everything that happens with her, and the fact that she has moved on. I don't know if I should tell him all the. Should I tell you all the little details? I mean,
well, I didn't know if there's spoilers, even though it's out.
There is so many spoilers in there that. Well, she's okay. I won't tell you. I won't tell you. She's dating someone that's definitely like ultimate betrayal, you know, for him, and that creates a whole set of emotions that send him spiraling down, while his friend Hamid and Toby Nick in this case was trying to help him out and trying to find his own way and talk some sense into him. Meanwhile, you know, clearly his family has moved on when he's come back, and he's trying to find himself, and he isolates himself further and further, and he keeps having these visions, so to speak, within the dream sequences throughout the season that are, you know, pointing to home and his idea of home and going home. And in episode 8, you know, they do get to go home, and that's a whole another slew of experiences there. And I'm trying not to do spoilers. It's very, very hard not to, but I'm really, you know, I encourage you truly, just as someone who's very objective about their own work, it's really something that I'm extremely proud of, and I feel like it's an absolute, like, episode 8 is a masterpiece, and I'm so great to, like, I feel so incredibly blessed to have been surrounded with someone like Farah and all the great cast and crew to be able to fulfill such a vision, and I really, really encourage you just to watch it and give it a chance and see that last episode, because I feel like it's my life's work, like, truly coming together. You know, I heard a quote one time. It's like, if you are able to do one masterpiece in a lifetime, it's a worthy trek. You know, and that's something that was in the back of my mind the entire time while I was making the show. And in life, you know, you hope that you're able to fulfill it. And I remember watching the first cut from my editor before I did my thing with her and the edit, and I just remember my wife sitting next to me, and we were just completely bawling, and I couldn't believe what I just watched. So, and the fact that it's based and grounded in my life, and able to share it with the wonderful Farah, and for her to have, like, basically a copy-paste experience from my life was truly something I will treasure for the rest of my life.
Can you talk about, okay, so on screen the relationship between mother and son is just, it's incredibly moving, and it's really funny, and it hits on so many different marks, whether it's you know, the immigrant parent thing, even though Mo is too, but still, I mean, there's the, you know, the generational thing, but also, as the performers outside of these roles, your experiences are very similar, your backgrounds, and for those of you that don't know that, can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I was born in Palestine. I lived in Jordan. I lived in Kuwait for a long period of time, and then the Gulf War came, so I had to leave to Syria to complete my studies. I lived there for almost 13 years, and then got married and moved to Egypt and lived there for 11 years, and then moved to the States when I was 40-something, 45. And I came with my kids, and it wasn't easy, so I went through a lot of pain, and he keeps doing this every time. So I went through a lot of what Mo went through in his life, and what you saw in the show. I used to stare at the ceiling so many times at night, hugging my two girls and just thinking, what will happen next? When will I get my papers? What will happen? Will I be deported? Will. So I understand totally what he went through, and I think so many people relate to this, and
It's incredible.
Yes.
She was born in Nablus. She went to Kuwait, just same thing as my family. Fled the Gulf War, ended up in California after. I didn't know you were in Syria and Egypt. My God. Jordan, excuse me. And then and Jordan. She said and Jordan. We fled like 6 countries. We just skipped and went right to Texas. But really, like we did have such a mirrored our own experiences. Like it was really wild to the point when she was cast. When I cast her in the show, we were on Zoom at the time, and it was still like getting out of COVID. And I remember telling her, speaking to her in Arabic, I'm like, hey, you got the role. And she was like, yeah! I was like, no, I don't want them to know that I told you that you got the role. And then she sent me a voice message on WhatsApp, and I'm listening to the message at my mother's house, and my mom walks in and she goes, I don't remember sending you a voice message today. I'm getting chills thinking about it, and it makes me so emotional because they couldn't have cast it any better because they do sound alike. Mannerisms are the same, and I'm so blessed. And to cast her was like more than perfect because she could play in the flashbacks. She's so young and has so much life in her. She could play young, she could play older, we can age her out, you know, like it was such a blessing to have you. And what happens in episode 7 between her and my sister in the show is literally like one of the best things that I've ever been a part of. And when you see two characters, especially in a mother-daughter relationship, and they're both, you know, just getting through such a difficult time and resolving it in such a beautiful way. And some of the dialogue was a lot of it in Arabic at times, and I was looking around as I was directing the scene, and I see everybody else just crying. And I'm like, they don't even speak Arabic. I'm like, I'm sure we nailed it now. This is great. So it really is just an incredible thing. And initially in the creation of the show, they were saying, you know, you should take out this element of Kuwait. And I was completely against that because you have to understand there's generational displacement. You have to understand what happens when because I thought we were fine in Kuwait. I was so young, I didn't know that we were stateless or had this thing. I didn't know until the war happened, and I instantly, the reality all set in that we're stateless. So.
And you know, here the subject matter, it's a comedy. This is a comedy, and it's really funny. But this is really heavy duty stuff too, and I don't know. It's just a big congratulations for taking something that can be so heart wrenching, particularly now, so political and all of those things, and just spinning something that is human out of it and something that is really funny. So, and you both did that, and the relationship between, you know, mother and son totally gets to that. There's just beautiful moments, and there's great moments when you're just kicking his ass.
I mean, this is mostly what Arab moms are. They are like this. I remember one time my brother broke his leg. He was jumping from the closet down, and my mom came, Ya Hamar, you donkey, and she started just slapping him. I know it's abuse. It's just slapping
Let's cut that out, shall we?
And then she said, oh, mommy, are you okay? So they have this contradiction, but they have a kind heart. When my parents immigrated to the States in the 80s, my mom was like the the Ministry of Internal Affairs and the Ministry of Education. She would make sure we study, we eat well, we don't cuss.
She knew everything.
Yes, she was like scanning everything. So it's like a thing in them.
Mm.
They can have this amazing ability of just containing everybody and making sure everybody is well educated and well fed and well mannered and everything. She was the therapist, she was the educator, she was everything. And I believe the moms everywhere should be like this, or they are like this, but
the mother's heart and love is infinite for your children.
Yes.
Like it's absolutely that, and and you show it.
Not
Although
when,
she's
not when it comes to tattoos.
no, not when it comes to tattoos. No, you still love your son no matter what, and even like they crossed the border and you shouldn't have, and clearly made many bad decisions. She's still like berating him, but saying, "Hey, please eat." You know what I mean? Habibi, I cooked this for you. I love you so much. And I remember hearing this story long ago. I can't remember who said it, but it was a beautiful scholar who relayed the mother's heart. Even if a son were to commit a murder and he goes into jail, that the father will tell the mother, "You can never speak to your son again," but she'll still send him cookies on his birthday. You know what I mean? It's that, I know it's an extreme example, but it really shows that the mother's heart and the connection with their child is never broken and always bonded.
So,
It's a very sad story to tell.
there was a murder, there were cookies.
No,
Many
that's
things
all.
happened.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
Don't make me self-conscious out here. Go ahead, Lorraine.
I'm sorry for bogging us down in that.
No, it's good.
So, when you're making the series, like, okay, this, I don't want to make it a spoiler, but what we're seeing in the series is pre-October 7th. I just said that. So, but when you're making the series, you know what's happening in the world.
Sure.
So, how is that affecting what you're going to do, how you're moving forward? Because here you are making the show, and it's like, oh my God, you're looking at the headlines, and how do you do that?
It was easily one of the most gut-wrenching things that I've gone through creatively. Just on a personal level, knowing that this is the first ever show with a Palestinian creator and lead of the show and whatnot. It's very, very difficult. And the amount of pressure and the intensity of being the guy, like you got to say something, what are you going to do while trying to write the show was also, super intense. And so I entertained it because I mapped out the show within a month. And then we went on strike May 1st and we came back October 1st. And then 6 days later, all hell broke loose. And there's just all these people yelling at each other online, no real productivity, no real conversations. And so I was just really focused on, just pouring my heart and soul into the show and letting that do the talking. Now, as far as entertaining October 7th, to discuss it in the show, to have it in the series, every time I started writing a script where it did have October 7th as, it took over the whole thing. The characters became really didactic. You lost everything. You didn't know anything about the characters. You really didn't see, anything. There's no depth to them. Like it just became about that event. So that was one dangerous thing to go down, rabbit hole to go down. Secondly, a whole year will pass by the time you film the series and the show comes out. So God knows, what's gonna, unfold, and then you made me film something that's completely, now it's just washed up and no good. So that was also a problem. Thirdly is you have to show what the state, the conditions were pre-October 7th. This all didn't just start on October 7th. It's very, very important to also contextualize and give a little history. Like we were checking phones and checking what's happening in the news on a regular basis. So it's very important to really understand that, and it's only season 2 and it's a comedy. And so to jump into October 7th, I felt like was a massive trap. And every time I wrote about it or try to infuse it into the series, really lost its heart and soul, quite frankly. And if there was an opportunity to do a third season, for instance, hypothetically, then maybe we'd entertain that then. But I think it's really, really important to stay focused on the characters and the families, and really stay grounded, and just to show what it's like pre-October 7th. And that's why I end the whole series on October 6th of 2023.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll catch that when you get to 8 if you haven't watched it yet. You'll see it.
Yeah.
Well, that's a divisive topic, isn't it? You know, I'm just speaking what I felt, man. I'm sorry. I hope he just had to tinkle. So there goes one vote. Yeah. No, just kidding. No, it was really, really different. It was extremely hard, and you know, recreating scenes with you know, family members that are no longer there, or you know, it's just really, really just tore me up. I would do scenes, and I would just like go off and just weep in a room, and nobody knew where I was, and I would come out and start directing again. All right, guys, so we're just gonna, you know what I mean? Like nothing happened. It was an insanely cathartic process, and I'm so glad that I had that. And there's so many things that were unresolved in my own heart that we're able to, you know, through the show, through the series, to deal with them accordingly, which is very unique and special. So I'm very grateful and so grateful to Farah, because she was a huge, huge part of that.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, part of it too is that the show is so character driven. You know, everybody has a background in there. Samir, you know, the brother,
Yes.
and the way that you all interact, there is this, you've built up, I hate the word chemistry, because you've built up these relationships in there that, they feel unique and they feel authentic, but I think also it helps it from becoming anything didactic, anything that's about the situation of it, you know, because you are humans, and it humanizes this whole situation. So, you know, observation, not question, but I think it's beautiful the way the characters develop in that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's really based off of my brother and my mother. It's very grounded in that way. And sure, we, you know, just loose with it at times, but my own brother in my real life is that. And he's so unique, and he's neurodivergent himself, and he's just such a wonderful human being, and one of the smartest guys that I've ever known, quite frankly. He just digests books like I eat a cookie. Like, he's just incredibly, you know, intelligent. And so that's like, you know, and I had both my mom and my brother name the characters in the show, because the last thing you want is for them to hate the names. And my brother named Samir like this. Like, he didn't even let me finish. It was like, what would you be other than Samir? I was like, oh my God. So you've thought about this, like, pretty often. So it just speaks to the character. I'm like, that's the character, you know, that's my inspiration for that character. And truly, like, all the flowers go to my family, because there wouldn't be a series without them.
Right. Yeah.
In terms of, like, when you're going into the, okay, you guys saw the first 2 episodes, right? So, okay. With the second season, the relationship between mom and son, like, how did that change, and what was it like for you guys going into it? Was there anything that you discussed, like, okay, or you can also go to, were there particular scenes between you guys that are like standout moments? Because there's ones that made me cry and laugh.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say a little thing. I used to send Mo WhatsApp messages. I bothered him so much. How about the mom? She's in love with Mo Hadid. How about the mom? She does this and that and has her own channel. How about this and that? And honestly, I think what he wrote and what he did, and it was even better than my imagination. He made it so true and so genuine, and you can believe that this is the mom and this is her son, and I don't know.
Well, the one thing specifically about the season is, like, it's not necessarily about my relationship with my mom in particular. It was all of us, sure, but it was more so what everyone individually was going through while they were, you know, making the olive oil business or trying to get the olive oil business off the ground. Is what each individual character was going through, you know. With my mom so focused on what's going on overseas and the tragedies that are going over there and the asylum case and just seeing what a mother carries for a family, right? But she's always has this heavy shoulders, you know. And so it's just like making sure we land that and giving that opportunity for my sister in the show, played by Shireen, who's just fantastic, just to have them have their moment and see what a classic mother-daughter relationship is like and bring that all together in episode 6, for instance, and 7. So it was just like making sure to show what everyone's journey is individually while also being galvanized as a family. And that was really the focus in the show, is to see what everyone's inner struggles were and how it comes together at the end is really in a beautiful way. So that's what I really stayed focused on. Because Mo's character is so self-indulgent, he's worried about himself and he's trying to figure it out. His ego's too big to just ask for help, and he's constantly just trying to figure it out, and he keeps just digging himself in a deeper hole. And he's too proud to ask anybody, to ask for a helping hand. And, you know, he's a grown man and he has to suffer the consequences of his choices. Where my mother is carrying this load and, you know, and being judged by how she's raised, you know, her son, and that he needs help and he should gain help, and having my sister jump into that, and having her husband, who's very funny in the show, have his own opinions, but he's also scared of his wife, you know, just bringing that all together is very, very special. And giving the opinions of the friends. Hamid's like, yeah, bro, you should just marry Austin and be happy, bro, you know, just do what I do. And the guy that you would think that doesn't have it together, he's the most put together out of everybody. So that's really fascinating too, to have a guy who just got to the States and 4 years later, he's already a citizen, he's fully like fulfilled and very protective and ingratiated into being a Texan, like is, you know, has guns everywhere. It's so funny. So it's just like having that is
I just want to add that he shed a light on a very important matter, the denial most of our parents go through when they have a kid who's special. Like this, they keep saying he's okay, and in the next episodes you will see a lot of scenes between me and my daughter. Like we keep fighting, and I have this denial issue that my son is okay, he doesn't need therapy, he doesn't need help. So this is a major thing.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And the fact that in the end though, you still also see that the mom was also right too. Like it was very interesting as well, saying like there is nothing wrong with you. You are perfect the way you are. But it's also good to hear it from someone else other than your mother, to know and to come to the realization of what you actually have and what you have to work through. That's also, you know, very important. We're in families, and it was a struggle for me, quite frankly, to write it into the show initially, because my family is unique in that way, where we do seek out help. We do, you know, we do have that. So I'm like, no, and then I realized like, oh, I'm kind of the anomaly in this situation where we have sought help and we have, you know, we were lucky enough to do that. My mom did that, so that's great. But we also have a lot of families that don't do that. So it's very important to do so. And I had to like really detach from my own life and just and really do that, because I was very protective of that and worried about how that could, you know, affect my own family. It's a very difficult, you know, thing to kind of juggle. So yeah, the whole thing was hard. The whole thing was like walking a tightrope, you know, and people are shooting lasers at you at the same time. Because I'm already walking a tightrope. Between the subject matter, between the, you know, everything. I thought that was my coffee. I really think it's just your purse. Oh my God, how much is this Netflix carpet? Just catch me just shampooing the carpet.
Yeah, we'll leave the purse to, we'll get it later,
All right.
yeah. So, and I think that's what's so great, well, first I wanted to ask you, because you brought up the meow meow, let's just get back to that.
Okay.
How much research went into like the whole, you know, immigration thing, the detention center, cause, and also during, you know, the series, you guys end up having to trying to go into Israel, and that whole process, you go in and being interviewed, God, your character does a beautiful back and forth with this, you know, customs agent. How much of that was research? Because it feels, I mean, it's funny, but it also feels like dire and like you are there.
Yeah, no, well, you asked the detention center part first, right?
Yeah.
So the detention center, tons of reading, like tons of reading. Spoke with my own attorney, who was my actual immigration attorney, who has over 45 years experience in immigration law. He consulted on the show both seasons, so he was a big part of the initial, conversations. And then we had someone who actually spent time in a detention center. Wow. So it was a multitude of things. It was both getting the legal aspect of things, and then tons of reading and getting as many pictures as you could for our production designer as well, and details through our consultant who was actually in a detention center himself, who ended up with an ankle monitor himself, and gave us the details of that, and that happens to him later on in the series. But yeah, so it's just, that was really, because we gotta nail that. The last thing you wanna do is mess that up. That's the last thing you want to do. It's such a giant responsibility. And also in that scene, I wanted to show how privileged Mo is also in it. He's a refugee, he's an asylee, but he gets in there and the guy's like, he overhears a story and how difficult the struggle was just to get to Panama. He almost died like 6 times. And he's like, how'd you get here? What's your story? I took a bus, I'm an idiot, and he tries to make himself sound better so to add more credibility, it was that. And then it was like, what do you do in the detention center? And initially the detention officer was 2 characters, and I condensed them down to 1 so we can get to know what the detention officer is going through. Because I was like, oh, we're gonna find out and we're gonna get to see inside of that world, but I'm very curious, what is it like to be a guy that's in there all the time? He's essentially in a jail of his own, right? Although he gets to go home, he still has to get up every morning and come back to this hellish environment. Like, what does that do to the human heart, the human condition, and the mind? And I thought it was really important to get a little insight in that as well. So that was the focus with the detention center in particular, because we only had a short time. And of course, I wanted to show a fantasy of him trying to leave, and I was like, one of my all-time favorite movies is Shawshank. I'm like, I gotta do that. I gotta see if hopefully we can pull it off, and I thought we did a great job with that.
So funny.
So initially it starts off obviously very serious with his grandfather, and that's one of the first early signals that he has to go home, and for him to be out on the other side of the wall. And most people don't catch it, but there's like a lightning bolt that just gently kisses the dome of the rock, just showing it's a metaphor for how contentious that whole area is and what everything is going on there. But there's like these little Easter eggs throughout. And as far as heading back home and landing in Tel Aviv, that's based off of my experience, my own experience. And when I took my mom and my brother back in 2016, it was my mom's first time to go back in 37 years, where she was actually allowed to go back, place where she was born, where she was raised. And my grandmother was carrying my mom in 1948 when Israel was formed. They left Haifa, on foot, and ended up in the West Bank. And so my mother's literally been experiencing this life from the womb, So to have her go back and to have this conversation, it's just standard, really, honestly.
Yeah.
It was very standard.
We are running out of time. We've run out of time. When you get to the back and forth, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so good. And thank you so much. Thank you. And I wish we had more time.
I wish we did too. Thank you so much.